Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Currently Speaking, the podcast of the Current Consulting Group. I'm Bill Current, founder and president of the Current Consulting Group. As you may know, we do these podcasts every week, so we have lots and lots of them in our archive. Go to currentconsultinggroup.com. You can check out past episodes of Currently Speaking there. You can also follow us on all the major podcast platforms, including our YouTube channel, and find past episodes there as well. So welcome to today's episode. Let's get started. Today's podcast is entitled Marijuana, Violence, and the Rescheduling Controversy. Mr. President, please don't do it. Don't do what, you might ask? Don't reclassify marijuana under the Controlled Substances Act. Moving marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 under the Controlled Substances Act would be like giving fentanyl-laced candy to children, deceptively dangerous. Yet that's what President Biden said he was going to do, and President Trump has signaled he is now considering doing. However, the consequences for society, workplaces, and families will be catastrophic. At a time when reducing crime and violence are such high priorities for this administration, such a move doesn't make sense. There are not enough National Guard troops to send to all the cities that will experience a dramatic increase in violence and crime after rescheduling essentially legalizes marijuana. As I record this podcast episode, marijuana is classified as a Schedule 1 controlled substance. Schedule 1 drugs, according to the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, have, quote, a high potential for abuse, no currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States, and a lack of accepted safety for use under medical supervision, end quote. That describes marijuana perfectly. But we also know that there is a definite link between marijuana use and violence. Dr. Ben Carson, a former pediatric neurosurgeon and former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Trump's first term, is advocating against rescheduling marijuana. He said, quote, I urge caution when we consider such sweeping changes. The intent may be compassionate, but the consequences are certainly harmful. As someone who's spent decades caring for the health and well-being of families across America, I have seen firsthand how substance abuse devastates lives and communities, end quote. Now, Dr. Carson added this, quote, the research is clear. More marijuana means more crime. A University of Colorado study found crime rates up 1,452% higher in neighborhoods with at least one marijuana dispensary. In Denver, areas near dispensaries had 85 more property crimes per year than those without. Unfortunately, crime spikes aren't unique to states like Colorado that have a lax drug policy. A comprehensive review conducted in 2024 of states with legal weed found that post-legalization, substance use disorders, chronic homelessness, and arrests increased by 17%, 35%, and 13% respectively. The same report found legalization increases arrests for violent crime by 18% and property crime by 15%, end quote. Another highly respected medical expert, Dr. Mark Siegel, also considers marijuana deceptively dangerous. He recently said, quote, weed is the most dangerous drug in America. The main reason for this is the fact that most people don't think it is. In fact, they typically think just the opposite. They believe not only that pot is safe, but also that it has true medicinal qualities. Little do they know that those benefits are barely worth the paper you wrap your joint in, end quote. Still not sure marijuana is dangerous? Consider the following. First, quote, the shooter who killed 2 children and injured 21 others at Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis blamed gender and weed for his mental health issues. The shooter, Robin Westman, wrote in a manifesto, quote, gender and weed, expletive up my head. You can imagine what he was saying there. I wish I never tried experimenting with either. Don't let your kids smoke weed or change their gender until they are like 17, end quote. Second, in a paper published by JAMA Network Open, postdoctoral scholar Elliot Mathey, PhD, shared the results of a study that examined whether state marijuana legalization has led to changes in rates of violent injuries. Quote, the researchers found that recreational marijuana legalization was associated with about a 20% increase in self-harm injuries among males under the age of 40, end quote. Mathey inexplicably stated the study's results represented good news because, quote, research findings are largely a story of no problem, but suggest a potential concern from one population group. Never mind the fact, I say, that men under 40 is an extremely large subgroup, representing nearly 89 million people in the U.S. in 2025. Third, according to a report published by the National Library of Medicine, quote, there is evidence of a relationship between illicit drug use and intimate partner violence. In a meta-analysis of 96 studies, researchers found that use of marijuana was significantly associated with partner violence among all ages. Other studies have demonstrated support for the positive relationship between marijuana use and intimate partner violence among high school students, college students, and clinical populations, end quote. And fourth, referring again to a report published by the National Library of Medicine in 2022, quote, mass shooters at Representative Gabby Gifford's constituent meeting in Tucson, Arizona in 2011, a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado in 2012, the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida in 2016, the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas in 2017, and Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida in 2018 were reported to be marijuana users. It could be a coincidence, but increasing evidence suggests a connection, end quote. Moving marijuana to Schedule 3 will most assuredly lead to more crime and violence and thus make America less safe. We know this because marijuana legalization has led to increases in other negative consequences when the drug becomes more accessible. For instance, consider the increase in workplace accidents related to marijuana use. According to Quest Diagnostics, quote, the percentage of employees in the general U.S. workforce testing positive for marijuana following an on-the-job accident increased to its highest level in 25 years in 2022. Now imagine what a marijuana positive result on a post-accident test can do to increase the cost of a company's workers' compensation and liability policies. In addition to the liability a company will likely face for injuries and property damage caused by marijuana-impaired employees. Quest further explained the correlation between marijuana and post-accident test results this way, quote, these increases in post-accident marijuana positivity correspond with the legalization of marijuana in certain states. In 2012, Colorado and Washington became the first states to legalize marijuana for recreational use. Since then, a total of 24 states and the District of Columbia have legalized the recreational use of marijuana, and 39 states plus DC have legalized medical use, although either kind of use remains illegal under federal law. Marijuana legalization will just make it that much easier to get marijuana, to use marijuana, and to be at work under the influence of marijuana, including driving a school bus, flying an airplane, or operating a forklift while impaired by marijuana. As well, we can expect incidents of violent crimes to increase. Nothing good will come from rescheduling marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. Dr. Siegel added this, quote, there ought to be no rush to make marijuana products easier to come by, and there is no reason to change its status as a Schedule 1 drug despite pressure to do so, end quote. Marijuana is highly subject to abuse, and there is widespread disagreement about whether it serves a legitimate medical purpose. In fact, according to the federal government, quote, the FDA and DEA have concluded that marijuana has no federally approved medical use for treatment in the U.S., end quote. With all due respect, Mr. President, please don't do it. For the safety, well-being, and overall good of America, don't reschedule marijuana. And if by the time this podcast is posted, you've already done it, please undo it. Now that concludes today's podcast episode. Thank you for joining us. Check us out on YouTube and all the other major podcast platforms, and go to currentconsultinggroup.com to find all of our past episodes in our podcast archive. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time.